Just 3 digits. That's the key to unlocking this entire mystery. 228. 2.5 miles. 6 minutes. Keep those figures in mind. Don't forget them. Because before this video wraps up, you're going to realize precisely how these specific stats trapped federal agents inside a briefing room, analyzing 10,000 hours of security tape and why the Bureau refuses to utter a single word to the press about what's actually on those recordings. Welcome to the investigation of Nancy Guthrie. But if you assume you've got this whole thing figured out, you're dead wrong. Trust me. Before we dive deeper into the details, leave a comment below. Let me know where you're tuning in from. Drop your city, your country, and the exact time on your clock right now. Our audience has literally tracked alongside this exact probe since the very beginning. Your attention is crucial here. Make sure to subscribe and ring that bell. Whenever there's a break in the mystery and the clues strongly suggest a break is happening, we will be the first ones to report it. Let's return to our digits. At exactly 2:28 a.m. on February 1st, 2026, a heart-tracking app installed on Nancy Guthrie's smartphone logged a sudden drop. Her internal defibrillator, the implanted gadget constantly recording her cardiovascular rhythms 24/7, completely severed its wireless tie to her mobile device. This signal failure isn't some wild guess. It represents a verified, officially logged piece of clinical evidence that authorities have openly authenticated. Top brass familiar with the probe admitted to NBC News that this connection drop happened during the pre-dawn stretch of February 1st. Pima County authorities verified the fact. Federal agents backed it up too. That digital clock is absolute. Let's break down the scientific reality of that lost signal. We only have 3 possible reasons why a medical heart app would drop the link with its synchronized smartphone. Either the cell gets carried way outside of the wireless radius, the software gets purposefully turned off, or the individual with the implant gets physically taken way past their property's Wi-Fi boundaries. Each and every one of those possibilities points to one unavoidable, terrifying reality. At 2:28 a.m., somebody was taking Nancy Guthrie. This 84-year-old woman had resided at that exact same Catalina Foothills property in Tucson for over 50 years. She relied on everyday heart pills and absolutely needed that tracking tech to stay alive and out of danger. At 2:28 a.m., the implant electronically stamped the exact second she was taken away from her sanctuary, bringing us to our next figure, 2.5 miles. Out on Camino Royale, a quiet neighborhood street weaving across Tucson's north side, somebody's doorbell cam grabbed a clip at 2:36 a.m., a car cruising down that empty street during an hour when absolutely nobody has any legitimate business being out driving around there. The local county sheriff officially went on record saying that the car showing up right then perfectly matches their working schedule of the crime. Federal authorities echoed the exact same thing, and immediately after, every single official clammed up. They got intentionally, frustratingly tight-lipped regarding the contents of that video, the specific type of ride, and its ultimate destination. An NBC reporter named Liz Kitz actually navigated the exact streets connecting Nancy Guthrie's house to the specific spot on Camino Royale where that security lens caught the car. She took the very same route a cautious suspect would pick at 2:30 in the morning, the hidden, out-of-the-way side streets. It's a journey that bypasses all the big traffic lights. Exactly the way you'd drive if your main goal was slipping away fast without catching anyone's attention. Driving that distance clocked in at precisely 6 minutes. 2:28 a.m. The heart monitor drops. Tack on 6 minutes to that. That puts you at 2:34 a.m. The mysterious car rolled into the frame at 2:36 a.m., leaving a 2-minute window unaccounted for. But you have to realize that this tiny fraction of time isn't some sort of glitch in their calculations. Think about it. If you literally just snatched a person out of a secured house in the pitch black, what's your next move before speeding down a side street? You're going to check your rear view? You pull off your disguise. You make absolutely sure there aren't any cops up ahead. You inhale deeply and force your adrenaline down before you finally stomp on that gas pedal. 120 seconds is the psychological fingerprint of a criminal shifting from the active kidnapping stage to the getaway portion. It's not a hole in the case. It is the clue itself. The Pima County Sheriff, Chris Nanos, openly told the press that seeing this ride completely fits the timeline they built. He said that right into the microphones. We're not talking about a whispered rumor, some unnamed insider, or a crazy social media conspiracy. This is the primary department running the show, confirming that a car was there during the exact time frame established by clinical info off a heart monitor. But let's talk about what the feds are hiding. They are sitting on 10,000 hours of video. They possess mobile pings, tracking exactly whose phones traveled the path from the Catalina foothills to Camino Royale between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. They grabbed tag reader snapshots covering every single avenue branching off that main escape path. They scooped up all the electronic footprints a massive government bureau could possibly harvest from a neighborhood during the 24 hours wrapped around a verified kidnapping. Yet they haven't uttered a single word regarding the car's brand, the specific build, which way it was driving, or the identity on the title linked to those plates. Federal agents don't keep their mouths shut about clues they haven't found. They stay quiet to guard the golden evidence they already possess. An ex-NYPD investigator who took a hard look at the doorbell video openly guessed the ride was a Kia Soul, a small hatchback, no bulky van, no massive truck meant for hauling stuff, just an everyday commuter car that rolls down a suburban street at 2:30 in the morning without making a sound. An insomniac glancing out their blinds wouldn't think twice about it. That wasn't a random choice. That was highly calculated. The perpetrator specifically picked out that exact set of wheels so it would completely blend in, and the way a crime is designed always exposes the criminal behind it. Camino Royale dumps right out onto East River Road. Once hitting that intersection, whoever was behind the wheel could easily shoot off down 4 totally different paths. They could head south down Oracle Road towards downtown Tucson and Interstate 19, stretching 60 miles straight down to the Mexican border at Rio Rico. Or they could take Campbell Avenue west, cutting through neighborhoods right into a very particular section of the Tucson city layout. Going north leads to Oro Valley, a suburban area perched high up in the Catalina foothills where a certain person lives, someone whose name pops up constantly in this probe. Finally, heading east takes you out into vast desert expanses with hardly any houses, bone-dry riverbeds, hiking trails, and rugged landscape where an ex-cop openly stated someone could easily stay hidden for months, just a 2 to 5 mile distance from Nancy Guthrie's property. Federal agents absolutely know exactly which way that vehicle headed at 2:36 in the morning. Yet, they are keeping their mouths shut. That quietness, the intentional choice to hide just one crucial routing detail, points to a couple of distinct possibilities. Either authorities are keeping the suspect in the dark about finding the video evidence, or they do not want the person realizing they have already tracked their exact route to a final stop. Whatever the reason, holding back info is not out of cluelessness. It is a carefully built strategy. At the core of that strategy are 2 individuals, a pair of guys whose past actions, physical whereabouts, and psychological profiles put them squarely in the crosshairs of this inquiry. This isn't based on mere rumors, but rather on a massive pile of thoroughly vetted, government-backed, rock-solid evidence. One of these guys left Nancy Guthrie right at her doorstep 4 hours before she vanished from her residence, and he hasn't uttered a peep to the press for more than 5 weeks. There is also a guy whose body type matches up perfectly with the exact dimensions federal investigators figured out using crime scene recreation right by her entryway. Tomaso Dominic Evans shares a 19-year established bond tying the two together, placing both men on that exact street, along that exact route, during that precise 6-minute time frame. The automobile showed up on camera at 2:36 a.m. Her heart monitor went offline right at 2:28 a.m. The commute separating those 2 spots takes exactly 6 minutes. However, there is a massive piece of the puzzle that all the major news stations reporting on this mystery keep missing completely. Just having the car on tape isn't what makes this proof so ironclad. It boils down to something detectives refer to as a psychological breadcrumb. It is a whole series of decisions, paths taken, and tracked routines that seem totally harmless if you look at them one by one. Yet, when you piece them together over various days and numerous sightings, they create a picture that any defense attorney would have a nightmare trying to tear apart in front of a jury. Moreover, the string of actions acting as the heartbeat of this entire probe stretches way past the 1st of February. Figuring out just how deep into the past it reaches and what it actually reveals is when the detective work gets extremely precise. Long before diving into the clues, the video clips, or the suspects, we have to fully understand who this lady was as a person, because the second you get a grasp on how she lived, the fact that she was intentionally singled out becomes blatantly obvious. Nancy Ellen Long came into the world on January 27, 1942, growing up in Fort Wright, Kentucky. After finishing her degree at the University of Kentucky, she tied the knot with Charles Errol Guthrie on December 28, 1963, kicking off a globe-trotting lifestyle together. Charles worked in the mining industry as an engineer. His job dragged the whole crew out to Melbourne, Australia, which is exactly where their youngest child, Savannah, arrived in 1971. 2 years after that, the bunch touched down in Tucson. They made themselves comfortable in a rustic mud brick house up in the Catalina foothills close to Campbell Avenue and Skyline Drive. Hidden away in the elevated desert terrain overlooking town, they firmly established their lives in that spot, and Nancy stayed put forever. She brought up her 3 kids, Savannah, Annie, and Cameron, right there in that very community. She carved out a solid job in the public relations department over at the University of Arizona, putting in almost 20 years of hard work. Coworkers always thought of her as the kind of person who could effortlessly lighten the mood while keeping the whole office united and strong. When Charles passed away out of nowhere from a massive heart attack while traveling for business down in Mexico back in 1988, Nancy was just 46. She completely pushed her own heartbreak to the side just to keep her loved ones from falling apart. Savannah, who was only 16 at the time, mentioned later on the Today Show that her mom tackled every single obstacle with fierce determination and deep-rooted spiritual beliefs. She never walked down the aisle again. She never moved out of the foothills area either. She resided completely by herself in that exact residence for upwards of 50 years. Once February 2026 rolled around, Nancy Guthrie had reached 84 years of age and had a tough time getting around. She relied heavily on a pacemaker to keep ticking and had to take heart pills every single day just to stay stable. Despite all that, her relatives and even the Pima County Sheriff's Department swore that her brain was still operating at 100%. She was incredibly witty, fiercely self-reliant, and stuck to her schedule like glue. She logged onto an online Sunday Mass every single weekend without ever missing a beat. So, when she failed to log in on the 1st of February, someone from the congregation immediately rang up her relatives. Her folks tore through the house looking for her before finally dialing 911. Hey, where are you guys tuning in from today? Leave your city down in the comment section below. You guys pay way closer attention to this mystery than any mainstream news network, and having you here is a massive deal. Nancy Guthrie didn't just wander off into thin air. Somebody snatched her, and whoever pulled it off knew precisely where to find her, understood her daily habits, and pinpointed the exact moment no one else would be around. Saturday, January 31st, 2026. That was the final normal night Nancy Guthrie would ever experience. Right at 5:32 p.m., she pulled up the Uber application on her smartphone, booked a driver, and took the quick cruise from her place in the Catalina foothills over to her daughter Annie's property just down the street. They ate supper together. They played a couple hands of cards. She hung out for about 4 hours alongside Annie and Tomaso Cion, the guy who married her daughter and joined the Guthrie clan. The whole setup was totally standard. It was laid back and cozy. Literally everyone agreed that there wasn't a single weird thing about the entire get-together. Around 9:48 p.m., Tomaso Cion gave Nancy a lift back to her place. Her automatic garage door went up. It then shut tightly right at 9:50 p.m. Afterwards, Cion stated he deliberately waited in his vehicle to make sure she made it through the door unharmed prior to driving off. Those brief 2 minutes, featuring the garage door lifting and shutting, represent the final verifiable proof that Nancy Guthrie was safe and sound within her residence. After that, absolute silence falls over the property. Total darkness sets in, and the countdown begins. Throughout the following 3 hours and 57 minutes, there is an absolute absence of any official activity. Zero phone activity occurred. Not a single text was sent, and absolutely zero physical motion triggered the active security cameras within the residence. By herself, Nancy Guthrie remained in the very same residence she called home for over 50 years, situated in a deeply familiar community. Resting in the exact spot she always did during countless arid evenings, she possessed absolutely zero warning for the impending threat. Right around 1:47 a.m., the security lens positioned by the main door lost its signal. It was certainly not an electrical glitch or a random hardware failure. That hardware was deliberately disabled during a crucial time frame, a detail law enforcement officials openly verified as an essential piece of the puzzle regarding her vanishing. Local law enforcement leaders in Pima County made this completely obvious. Federal agents backed up the claim. An unknown individual intentionally killed the video feed right before walking up to the main entryway. This isn't just some random accident. It demonstrates calculated steps. We are looking at a deliberate strategy, playing out step by step. Roughly 25 minutes after that, close to 2:12 a.m., an additional surveillance device positioned on a different part of the lot picked up some sort of physical activity. However, no video clip was saved. The homeowner lacked the necessary premium storage plan for that particular lens. Even so, the system's sensors definitely noticed a presence. The storage system designed to hold that footage contained nothing. Following that, right at 2:28 a.m., the specialized heart-tracking software installed on Nancy Guthrie's smartphone entirely severed communication with her implanted medical device. Detectives ultimately found her mobile device, her cash and cards, her listening piece, her required heart pills, and her vehicle completely undisturbed at the property. She absolutely did not leave voluntarily. She never reached out to a single person. All the basic essentials a typical human takes when deciding to depart remained entirely untouched in their usual spots. The solitary absent piece was the homeowner herself. Once law enforcement breached the property and scoured the main doorway, technicians collected physical evidence that genetic testing conclusively matched back to Nancy Guthrie. The leading official, Sheriff Nanos, revealed to the New York Times that detectives found other unsettling elements at the location which, as he put it, felt completely wrong, though he refused to share further specifics with the press. The bracket meant to hold the main security lens was bare. The actual hardware had been physically torn away. Over the course of 41 minutes, spanning from 1:47 a.m. to 2:28 a.m., an intruder navigated a secured and fenced yard under the cover of pitch-black conditions, completely disabled the surveillance hardware, and successfully extracted an 84-year-old resident suffering from physical limitations out of her dwelling without setting off any sensors capable of preserving video evidence. Such meticulous execution hardly points to an unknown individual randomly selecting a target. This points directly to a perpetrator who had thoroughly mapped out the layout mentally well before stepping foot on the grass at night. Moreover, the clues lingering right behind that main entryway would soon reveal to detectives the exact profile of the suspect they needed to hunt down. 9 entire days. That happens to be the exact duration those crucial video files remained totally inaccessible. As law enforcement initially analyzed the victim's smart entry lens right after her sudden disappearance became official on February 1st, 2026, the very solution they sought existed right on site, attached to the exterior wall about 6 feet over her primary doorway. However, because the homeowner lacked a paid online backup plan, the internal memory was essentially wiped clean. That specific lens captured the entire ordeal. Yet, the internal memory chip supposed to preserve the files contained absolutely nothing. Next, federal cyber experts dug significantly further into the system. Bureau leader Cash Patel officially announced on February 10th that his unit successfully extracted visual evidence by scraping lingering digital fragments buried deep within the tech company's external storage networks. The major tech giant supplied crucial engineering support, and the resulting media salvaged from those inactive databases fundamentally shifted the outward trajectory of the entire manhunt. The salvaged video revealed a disguised individual advancing toward the main entrance during the pre-dawn moments of February 1st. This person was fully concealed in shadowy garments, dark handwear, tennis shoes, and a facial covering. though federal analysts pointed out that the mask looked somewhat pale only because of the device's night vision sensors. In reality, the facial covering was pitch dark. The intruder hauled a 25-liter Ozark Trail rucksack, a specific piece of gear distributed solely through the massively popular retail chain's in-house line. Plus, the suspect visibly wore what looked remarkably like a loaded handgun, strapped tightly into a chest-rig holster over their clothing. Former federal investigators and criminal profilers analyzing the tape openly highlighted a very distinct quality regarding the suspect's gait. They were neither hurrying nor acting frantic. A veteran bureau operative even characterized the intruder's stride as seemingly completely at ease, as if the individual navigated the pathway with the confidence of a person intimately acquainted with the area. They showed zero doubt upon reaching the fence and never once stopped to figure out their surroundings. The exact layout of the yard clearly felt second nature to them. The suspect lifted a covered palm and smashed it right against the glass of the recording device. Following that, realizing the initial attempt failed to do the trick, they grabbed some nearby foliage growing by the entryway and utilized a severed branch to blind the lens entirely. Attempting to use a palm before switching to a branch proves this wasn't just made up on the fly. It demonstrates a calculated tactic. We are dealing with an intruder who planned out exactly how to handle the surveillance long before pulling up. This exact moment is when the video evidence turns incredibly crucial for the forensic team. Federal authorities published 2 completely separate batches of photographs salvaged from the security lens. An inside informant told the major cable news network that these visual frames were actually recorded on 2 entirely different days, rather than solely on the early hours of February 1st. The perpetrator had physically stood right outside the victim's entryway prior to her actual kidnapping. Federal technicians set up a large canopy across the main porch, conducted spatial calculations using specialized bulbs designed to mimic the original night vision feed, outfitted staff in identical gear, and ultimately deduced the intruder stood somewhere between 5 feet 9 inches and 5 feet 10 inches, with a medium frame. Furthermore, while analyzing the night vision recording, retired top-level federal investigator Jim Clemente spotted what looked closely like a distinct blemish or tattoo on the intruder's lower right arm. Maybe some fresh ink. Should they verify it, this detail acts as a physical fingerprint, allowing detectives to accurately include or eliminate individuals from their list of potential perpetrators. Think about it. Who stakes out a house, comes back for another look, ready to go, and breezes right past a secured main door in pitch black without setting off any security systems? You wouldn't expect a random intruder to pull that off. That screams of an inside job by a person who already knew the layout. Plus, the pair of individuals detectives continually circle back to each held the keys to that exact information. Whenever law enforcement tries to unravel a missing persons case, they always start with one basic inquiry: who laid eyes on the victim last? For this particular mystery, the response hasn't wavered once. All roads lead straight to one guy, Tomaso Cion, a 50-year-old local. His birth date is June 18th, 1975. Hailing from San Giovanni Valdo, an ancient medieval village located within Italy's Tuscany area. He moved out to Tucson back in 2006, which happens to be when he tied the knot with Annie Guthrie, Nancy's oldest girl. For upwards of 15 years, he's been an educator over at Basis Oro Valley School, instructing 6th grade science as well as advanced placement biology. The campus itself is situated roughly 10 miles north of where Nancy Guthrie lived in the Catalina foothills. On the webpage for an Italian cultural association, his bio paints a picture of a guy who enjoys creative writing in his free time, researches reptiles, strums the electric bass, and whips up his own pasta from scratch. Looking from the outside in, he appears to be an incredibly reserved and introverted individual. He gave Nancy a ride back to her place late on January 31st, claiming he made sure she got indoors safely prior to driving off. His vehicle vanished from her property right at 9:50 p.m. Ever since then, the official paperwork detailing his role in the probe has grown massive, yet it largely leans in a single direction. Federal agents raided the residence belonging to Annie and Cion on 5 distinct occasions. Their initial sweep took place on February 7th. Exactly 6 days post-disappearance, detectives went back to the house, spending a good chunk of the day indoors, snapping pictures of various living spaces as police cruisers locked down the surrounding neighborhood. Witnesses spotted officials hauling a metallic lockbox indoors at one point. On a different trip, they walked out hauling a pale container alongside a standard brown paper collection sack. An investigator was seen rocking blue latex gloves. Ex-FBI Specialist Tracy Walder openly evaluated that gear, suggesting the pale box held processing tools, while the paper sack contained retrieved clues. Showing up to a single suspect's house 5 separate times amidst an ongoing federal probe definitely breaks from the usual playbook. Every trip back implies authorities had a brand new, highly specific goal compelling them to knock on that door again. As the search intensified, cops also hooked up Annie's car to a tow truck and took it into police custody. Sheriff Nanos openly verified the seizure, although he refused to spill any details regarding what clues they were actually hunting for. Shifting to the media spotlight, Savannah Guthrie uploaded several tearful clips right from Arizona. Annie worked closely alongside the cops, allowing them to scour her home multiple times and haul away her ride. Meanwhile, Nancy's boy, Cameron Guthrie, a former Air Force colonel, went straight to the press, staring down the lens to beg the culprit for his mom's safe recovery. Literally, everyone in the Guthrie clan made a point to show their faces on the news right after Nancy vanished. Cion gave zero. No press releases. No standing shoulder to shoulder with Annie during her broadcasts. Absolutely zip regarding the manhunt, the family's cries for help, or the cash bounty. Then there's the physical data. The FBI built a forensic model at Nancy's front door, pinning the suspect's stature somewhere around 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 10 inches tall. Several true crime reporters and experts scrutinized pictures of Cion, reliably estimating his height closer to 6 feet, or roughly 183 centimeters. Those stats just don't match up. That doesn't clear his name, though it's just a data point. And throughout this entire ordeal, every piece of data forces the police to dig deeper instead of backing off. Officially, Cion isn't labeled a suspect, nor does he face any indictments. However, the sheer volume of police activity swirling around the guy, 5 home sweeps, a confiscated car, paired with upwards of 5 weeks of dead silence while his in-laws fell apart on national television, creates a glaring trail of behavior that profiling experts say perfectly matches a guy who's strictly following his lawyer's orders to keep his mouth shut. Keeping quiet like that isn't just an accident. It's a calculated choice he makes every time he wakes up. Yet, Cion is merely the first person of interest. The next guy popped up on the radar not because he was related to the victim, but thanks to a rap sheet in the justice system. Moreover, the physical profile the FBI put together from Nancy's porch perfectly matches this new figure, a fact that authorities haven't ever bothered to openly deny. Back on February 4th, 2026, exactly 3 days post-disappearance, a profile on the app X, managed by a person claiming to be a sleuth, dropped a screenshot of a document online. The image showed an official log from the Pima County Courthouse. Sitting right at the header was the name Dominic Aaron Lee Evans. Right underneath, the rap sheet laid out some heavy accusations: felony breaking and entering, mugging, stealing, corporate fraud, and driving under the influence. Before the day was out, that single image had gone viral across practically every web sleuth community digging into the mystery. Several news teams double-checked the files directly through the Arizona Pima County legal databases. The criminal history was absolutely legitimate. Turns out, the paperwork tied back to a 48-year-old Tucson local who taught 5th grade and banged the drums, a guy who'd actually spent the better part of 20 years jamming in a band with Tomaso Cion. But you need to grasp a crucial detail before we even dive into the hard evidence. The nightmare that subsequently engulfed Dominic Evans and his loved ones serves as a textbook example of the chaos created when open-source legal documents clash with a major federal probe, fueled by an online mob with way too much free time and absolutely zero boundaries. The reality is that somebody doxed his personal residence on the web. Before the sun even came up, scores of strangers had already flooded his neighborhood. Speaking to the New York Times, his spouse, Andrea, described hiding in their pitch-black bedroom for hours on end, completely terrified to flick a switch She could only peer through the blinds at the growing crowd of trespassers. For his own protection, their 6-year-old boy had to be shipped off to family members, marking the very first time the child had ever slept away from his mom and dad. In a direct quote to the publication, Evans expressed that it felt as though his identity had been completely stolen. Meanwhile, Sheriff Nanos issued a formal public statement regarding the ordeal. The sheriff described the entire ordeal as absolutely awful, acknowledging that the man was enduring an absolute nightmare, and went on the record to suggest he hire legal counsel to explore defamation lawsuits against anyone spreading baseless rumors. Officially, Evans is not a person of interest. Authorities have never indicted him. Furthermore, law enforcement hasn't detained him at all regarding this specific inquiry. Nobody is debating those specific truths. However, detectives are building their case entirely on verified information. Based on official measurements, Evans falls perfectly into the Federal Bureau's estimated height bracket of 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 10 inches. Additionally, his physique, clearly seen in various public media clips and pictures, aligns seamlessly. The brunette beard and mustache shown in those media files perfectly match the physical traits of the disguised individual. On top of that, he resides in Tucson. He is thoroughly familiar with the local layout. Moreover, his criminal background features a prior arrest for breaking and entering, which the state of Arizona defines as illegally accessing or staying on a premises to carry out a serious crime. That specific statutory breakdown perfectly mirrors the exact tactical movements captured by the security camera on Nancy Guthrie's front porch, revealing an individual slipping past a security barrier and moving across the secluded lot with the calm confidence of a person who already knew the exact layout. According to him, his only face-to-face interaction with Nancy Guthrie happened during a spring holiday party at her residence back in 2011. He had taken his boy there to search for hidden candy. He physically stepped foot onto those grounds. He personally viewed the entryway. He stood within the perimeter walls. As for his whereabouts covering the late hours of January 31st, leading into the morning of February 1st, he claimed to be resting at his own house alongside his spouse and kids. His partner backed up that story completely. Furthermore, cellular tracking information aligned perfectly with his timeline. Detectives brought him in for roughly 40 minutes of questioning about 7 days after the incident occurred, and they hadn't reached out to him again prior to his sit-down with the major newspaper. All that currently stands is the matching bodily appearance. All that remains is his verifiable close relationship with Cion. Yet the primary focus for authorities since the very beginning hasn't been calculating the exact number of occasions he crossed paths with the victim. Rather, they want to figure out the exact depth of his knowledge regarding her lifestyle, as well as exactly who fed him those details. The key to that mystery is buried deep within a 19-year-long, rock-solid bond. Flashback to April 2007 in the heart of Tucson, Arizona. A pair of distinct individuals scrolled through different digital classifieds and ultimately crossed paths in a single space. Percussionist Dominic Evans originally linked up with guitar player Walter Gonolves after responding to a local internet forum call-out. Meanwhile, Tomaso Cion, who was already hitched to Annie Guthrie and firmly rooted within her family tree, replied to an entirely different musician-wanted blurb in the local weekly paper. The trio hit it off instantly. They dubbed their new musical project Early Black, carving out a unique alternative sound heavily influenced by gritty 90s rock. The guys booked gigs all over town, took the occasional road trip up to Phoenix or Flagstaff, and opened up for various touring groups hitting the southwestern alternative scene. Sometime between the end of 2009 and the beginning of 2010, they hit Loveland Studios alongside local audio producer Nathan Sabatino to track their first full-length record. They named the project Life, Love, Murder. The local paper ended up giving the release some genuinely stellar write-ups. As the seasons passed, the group kept right on penning new tracks and performing around the city. We're talking 19 years of practice sessions, 19 years of highway driving and tracking vocals, combined with the mountains of casual, everyday chatter that naturally glues a long-term brotherhood together. Throughout that entire nearly 2-decade span, Cion was perpetually holding the title of Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law. Law enforcement isn't trying to solve some massive riddle right now. They are merely applying the fundamental principles of relationship mapping. Exactly what kind of intimate details does a guy absorb about a household after nearly 2 solid decades of being best buddies with the guy who married into that specific clan? We aren't talking about intense questioning or spying, but rather casual banter. The typical chit-chat that unfolds while driving between dive bars, or hanging around a jam room long after the rest of the crew bounced, representing the effortless flow of secrets between two close pals who share immense trust over almost 20 years. He could easily learn her exact location, her daily habits, her physical ailments, her alarm systems, the literal blueprint of her house, the specific barrier blocking her entrance, if there was a guard animal on site, if she woke up easily, and the exact hour she usually hit the hay. The musician admitted to crossing paths with the victim a single time during a 2011 spring celebration hosted at her Catalina Foothills estate. He physically stepped onto those grounds. He actively crossed the threshold of that specific barrier. He laid eyes on the main entry. Those details are firmly established facts. However, the puzzle that federal agents are currently piecing together has absolutely nothing to do with that holiday party years ago. They care about the nearly 2-decade-long stream of accidental intelligence naturally exchanged during a regular bromance. It operates similarly to moisture seeping through a fissure in a rock, silent, unseen, and completely unavoidable. A single highway linked the physical whereabouts of both guys during the early hours of February 1st. Simultaneously, a 19-year bond intertwined their mutual understanding of that exact piece of real estate. Moreover, the forensic clues that experts have been quietly analyzing at a government facility since the initial days of the probe are rapidly shrinking the gap, connecting that insider information directly to his identity. The entirety of this massive criminal inquiry ultimately boils down to 4 distinct tiers of proof. We aren't dealing with wild guesses or rumors here. This is hard, heavily vetted, and fully authenticated scientific and deductive intelligence that authorities have been stacking up in government folders since the early hours of February 2nd, 2026. You need to grasp every single tier, comprehend its exact status, mainly because the tiny leap separating the current forensics from an official indictment is vastly smaller than law enforcement has let on to the press. The first element involves the ride. An automobile popped up on a digital doorbell feed along Camino Royale at exactly 2:36 in the morning on February 1st. A former New York Police Department investigator openly reviewed the clip, confirming the make and model was a compact crossover known as a Kia Soul. It's an incredibly basic, stealthy little ride, clearly hand-picked for something other than its interior space. Strictly to stay hidden. Officials from the Pima County Sheriff's Department backed up the fact that the car's arrival fits right into their established timeline for the probe. Federal agents backed this up as well. Following that, neither department would say another word regarding which way the automobile was headed. The Bureau is sitting on 10,000 hours of tape pulled from the area around Nancy Guthrie's subdivision, including smart doorbells, tag scanners, and security networks that collectively track any car driving across that zone from midnight to sunrise on the 1st of February. The feds understand exactly what is on those tapes. They are just keeping it to themselves. The second piece of the puzzle involves the handwear. On the 15th of February, officers found a dark glove roughly 2 miles away from Nancy Guthrie's residence in the Catalina Foothills. To the naked eye, it looked identical to what the disguised person had on during that porch camera video. Detectives shipped the item down to an independent crime lab out in Florida to get it tested. Genetic material pulled off the fabric pointed to an unidentified guy. Analysts ran it through CODIS, which is the federal government's massive DNA registry, containing upwards of 19 million criminal records. The system came up empty. Furthermore, the genetics from the apparel failed to align with any biological evidence found indoors. Come the 2nd of March, Sheriff Nanos openly acknowledged that the fabric's genetic trace led them right to a diner worker stationed just opposite the spot where the item was discovered. Authorities have completely ruled that guy out. The handwear mystery is closed. The genetics found inside the house, however, remain a question mark. This brings us to the third layer, the indoor biological evidence. By the 13th of February, officials at the Pima County Sheriff's Office announced that genetic traces picked up inside Nancy Guthrie's property did not belong to her or anybody she was close to. On the 19th of February, Sheriff Nanos went on the record to say that they were dealing with a complex genetic blend containing traces from multiple people, noting that detectives strongly suspect a portion of it ties back to the perpetrator. Law enforcement dispatched this evidence to an independent scientific facility down in Florida so experts could isolate and study the components. The technicians there hit a few roadblocks trying to untangle the overlapping profiles. Nanos did not hide this fact from the public. He explained that while the scientists faced hurdles, forensic methods are improving so rapidly that they anticipated a clear answer within a matter of weeks, maybe months. But detectives refused to just sit around. They have officially brought genetic family tree mapping into the fold. For context, this is the exact same tactic that unmasked the Golden State Killer following 4 decades of dead ends. It is also what led cops to Brian Koberger in the Idaho college slayings using a leftover pizza edge, and how they cracked the Gilgo Beach homicides via a tossed paper cup. You do not need a direct hit in CODIS for this to work. The perpetrator does not even need to have their genetics on file with the government. All it takes is a single family member popping up on a public ancestry site. From there, experts map out the entire bloodline until the only logical conclusion is the guy they are looking for. The fourth piece of the puzzle involves mobile network pings stashed inside government case files, which track every single phone passing through the area connecting the Catalina foothills to Camino Real from 2:00 to 3:00 in the morning on the 1st of February, 2026. Federal agents are keeping tight-lipped about what those logs reveal. Keeping quiet is a highly calculated move, and it gives you a massive clue regarding the true status of this manhunt. You have 4 distinct elements here: a car caught on video, indoor bodily fluids currently undergoing ancestral tracing, mobile tracking logs secured by the feds, and a suspect profile standing somewhere around 5'9" to 5'10". The guy has a typical physique and a potential scar or tattoo on his arm, a detail that authorities have yet to definitively pin on anyone, nor have they dismissed it. The dark handwear led nowhere. However, whatever traces were discovered indoors are a whole different story. The clues here are not just sitting under a microscope. They exist within habits, personal decisions, and the digital footprints folks leave behind once the heat of a massive federal probe starts breathing down their neck. Come the 2nd of February, just hours after Nancy Guthrie officially vanished, extortion messages started hitting news outlets. Fast forward to the 3rd, and major gossip sites like TMZ, along with a couple of Tucson broadcasters, specifically KOLD and K-Gun, got notes asking for a massive crypto payout if the family ever wanted to see her alive again. These messages came with a pair of strict cutoffs: the 5th of February and the 9th. Word is that one specific letter asked for $6 million and plainly stated that Nancy's life would be in immediate danger if the cash never materialized. Her relatives actually put out a public clip declaring that they were ready to fork over the cash. However, both of those target dates came and went. The individual behind the threats completely ghosted them after that. Bureau officials made it clear they were treating the demands as a real threat, but they were also working another angle behind the scenes. Detectives hit up firearm shops all over Tucson with one clear mission, which was to figure out exactly where the pistol and its carrying rig from the porch video came from. Cops also went door to door at local apparel shops, trying to match the dark, Walmart-style gear and face covering that the suspect had equipped. Officers walked through neighborhoods within a 2-mile stretch of the victim's property, asking folks for any security tape dating all the way back to January. They were not just grasping at straws here. The team was piecing together a psychological and physical roadmap, tracking exactly who went where, at what time, and what they drove during the weeks right before the 1st of February. That is when the internet search logs popped up. Fox News Digital broke the story that someone inside Arizona had been looking up Nancy Guthrie's street address way back in June of 2025. Another massive wave of queries hit the web in January of 2026, just a couple of weeks before the kidnapping took place. On top of that, authorities noticed localized Tucson web traffic digging into Savannah Guthrie's net worth and paychecks around December of 2025. Law enforcement and intelligence folks made sure to point out that algorithmic search spikes do not prove anything on their own. However, when you stack that up against a case already built on the fact that the suspect stalked the house beforehand It simply provides another concrete piece of evidence to their master timeline. What you are witnessing right now is definitely not an investigation stuck in the mud. Federal agents have already reached out to law enforcement down in Mexico. They even started hooking people up to lie detectors to systematically cross potential suspects off their list. $1 million is officially up for grabs right now. Meanwhile, that genetic family tree being pieced together from the interior biological profile down at a Florida lab isn't waiting around for anyone's help. It doesn't require an admission of guilt, and it absolutely refuses to quit. How much is keeping your mouth shut actually worth? Well, there's a specific price tag attached to that question, and that figure is just chilling in a federal evidence folder, slowly pinning down an identity. Cousin by cousin. That is exactly where things sit as of this very moment, not last month, not a couple of weeks back, but right now, back on March 2nd, 2026. Sheriff Chris Nanos sat down for an interview with NBC News and dropped 4 crucial words that everyone tracking this mystery desperately wanted to hear. We are getting closer. He verified that a specialized group out of the Pima County Sheriff's Murder Division is now officially embedded within the FBI's Tucson unit, bringing in detectives along with a senior ranking sergeant who are all set up at the FBI headquarters, pouring all their hours into this mystery right beside federal personnel. He made it crystal clear that his team is moving forward with the assumption that Nancy Guthrie is out there, still breathing. He mentioned they are holding on to certain details tightly, refusing to release them to the public because doing so could totally wreck the legal case they are putting together. Notice he said the legal case, not just the search. Following that, on March 5th and 6th, a fresh detail emerged. FBI personnel and local deputies headed back to the Catalina foothills, knocking on every single door throughout Nancy Guthrie's community, though they weren't looking for eyewitness accounts this go-around, but rather asking a highly specific, tech-related question. Did anyone living there experience any weird internet outages on the evening of February 1st? Several locals told authorities that their Wi-Fi actually did drop. We are talking about doorbell cameras showing blank spots in their recordings right during that specific time frame. There was something that looked like an antenna sticking out of the pocket of the person caught on Nancy's porch cam, which led detectives down a very particular path, theorizing that some kind of frequency blocker might have been used on that street that evening, intentionally knocking out surrounding security cameras and smart home devices right before the whole thing went down. Just let that sink in for a second. A signal blocker isn't something you just grab on a whim. It means whoever did this fully understood the victim's security setup. It shows serious, tech-savvy premeditation. It points to a perpetrator who knew precisely what kind of tech was active on that block and made a calculated, tactical choice to shut it all down before ever walking up to that porch. Authorities are currently attacking every single angle of this mystery all at once. That car spotted on Camino Royale is still getting cross-checked against hundreds of thousands of license plate hits. That interior DNA sample is still sitting in a Florida testing center, actively going through advanced forensic breakdown and family tree matching. The Pima County Prosecutor's Office has highly experienced lawyers working directly with the detectives, proving that this whole thing has already shifted into the early stages of trial prep. A former FBI specialist described this situation as the absolute furthest thing from a dead end, calling it blazing hot. With as many as 100 agents and data crunchers chasing down real-time clues, 2 individuals are still sitting right in the middle of the official evidence pile: Tomaso Cion and Dominic Evans. Neither guy has caught any charges, and police haven't officially labeled either of them a suspect. But they share a paper trail of a 19-year friendship. Both of their locations put them right along the exact same route that a certain car drove down at 2:36 in the morning on February 1st. Both remain squarely in the sights of an inquiry that Sheriff Nanos claims is gaining major ground with every passing day. That DNA family map doesn't require anyone to spill their guts. It doesn't need anyone to play nice. It pieces itself together, relative by relative, using whatever information is just floating around in public records. And once that family branch stops growing, it points to a specific person. That identity is already hidden in the numbers. The software is already doing its thing. And the gap between where the search is at this exact second and an actual suspect getting named out loud is, according to every credible source, smaller than it has ever been. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years of age. She has been missing from the house she spent her life creating for 36 straight days. She has every right to be brought home. If you have any clue, no matter how small, hit up the FBI hotline at 1-800-CALL-FBI or drop a tip straight onto tips.fbi.gov. The relatives are offering a $1 million bounty. The FBI has their own payout sitting at $100,000. Make sure you hit subscribe on this channel right now and smash that notification bell. The very second a suspect gets announced, the instant those DNA matches come back, the moment this whole thing flips from gathering clues to slapping on handcuffs. This is the exact spot that update drops first. Pass this along to anybody keeping tabs on this mystery. The more people looking at the facts, the tougher it gets for whoever did this to hide. We are not giving up. Not until she comes home. For 50 years, Nancy Guthrie's Tucson house was her ultimate sanctuary. It was the home where she raised her 3 children, navigated the heartbreak of losing her husband, and lived out her golden years with quiet, resilient dignity. But in the pitch-black hours of a February morning, that lifelong safe haven was violently breached. An 4-year-old mother, relying on a pacemaker and the comforting illusion of neighborhood security, was stolen from the very place she should have been most protected. Nancy's terrifying disappearance is more than a chilling mystery. It is a desperate, heart-wrenching wake-up call for every single one of us. The predators in our world don't always kick down front doors. Sometimes, they quietly study our daily routines, weaponizing the trust, familiarity, and predictability that bring us comfort. They slip through the unseen cracks of our busy lives. We can no longer afford to just look the other way. We must step up and become the fierce, unapologetic protectors of our aging loved ones and vulnerable neighbors. Check on the elderly living alone on your street. Be relentlessly vigilant about the acquaintances who enter their orbit. And never ignore the small, strange anomalies in your community. A silent neighborhood at 2:30 a.m. shouldn't be a blind spot for criminals to exploit. Let Nancy's story ignite a fire in you to watch over each other. Absolute safety might be a myth, but a united, observant community is the strongest shield we have. Don't wait until someone you love becomes a missing person flyer.